I call this meeting of the school board on May 4th, 2002 to order. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Basine?
Here.
Campson?
Here.
Clanton?
Present.
Gabriel?
Present.
Jordan?
Here.
Rousen?
Here.
Martin?
Here. Okay, can I get a motion to go into closed executive session?
Madam Chair, I move that we enter into an executive closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Ms. Tanner, please go ahead and read the motion.
Move that members of the school board go into a closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the school board of the city of Norfolk pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A1 of the Act. The subject of this portion of the session are the specific candidates for appointment to the board's Special Education Advisory Committee, School Health Advisory Committee, Career and Technical Advisory Committee, and Gifted Education Advisory Committee. Consultation with legal counsel and a briefing by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where discussion in open session would adversely affect the school board's negotiating or litigating posture, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A7 and 8 of the Act. The subject of this portion of the session is that is set out above in subsection A of this motion. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Rousen?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, thanks, everyone. We'll go to the conference room for our executive session.
Why did I run up with these?
Madam Chair, I move that we certify the executive closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. Can I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Rousen. Ms. Tanner, please read the resolution and call the question.
A resolution certifying the executive meeting of the school board of the city of Norfolk in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Whereas the school board of the city of Norfolk has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board of the city of Norfolk that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be resolved that the school board of the city of Norfolk hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the executive meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the executive meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board of the city of Norfolk. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Rousen?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, we'll proceed with our agenda for our work session. First, item 3.01, we have Gifted Education 5-Year Plan with Mrs. Steed. Good evening, how are you? Or afternoon?
Good afternoon, evening. It's kind of pre, kind of that in-between time. So.
You can begin whenever you're ready.
Perfect, thank you. So good afternoon, Madam Chair, Dr. Martin, Vice Chair, Mr. Clanton, members of the board, and Dr. Birdsing. I'm here to provide updates on the local plan for the education of the gifted here in Norfolk. In June of 2021, the Norfolk Public Schools School Board approved a revised gifted local plan focused on talent development, equity, and providing all students exposure to gifted pedagogy. Today's presentation is an update of the work that has been done this year in preparation of Norfolk Public Schools' updated services, and also includes information about the Virginia Department of Education's technical review process, part of the state's gifted regulations. After some context, I'll highlight some significant changes set to begin this fall, then share findings of the VDOE Technical Review Committee, along with Norfolk Public Schools' responses. Lastly, I'll recap Norfolk Public Schools' preparations of our revised services, presenting a timeline to demonstrate steps taken and soon to come. The VDOE requires divisions to post the local plan for the education of the gifted. This holds districts accountable for providing gifted services. The local plan contains 12 sections, including how a division defines, identifies, and serves its gifted students. Our goal last year was to revise our plan to include increased, comprehensive, and equitable services. The approved plan evolved from a series of Norfolk Public Schools focus groups and research. One big idea that arose from our findings emphasized the need for putting services above labels. Norfolk Public Schools will focus on having the appropriate services in place that best meet students' varying degree of readiness, incorporating a multi-level service approach. A second idea infused within our plan is potential is universal, but opportunity is not. Norfolk Public Schools will provide more opportunities to cultivate student potential across the district through implementing a talent development model at every elementary school. Thanks to the school board's approval of our revised gifted plan, Norfolk Public Schools is addressing the ideas around opportunities, potential, and appropriate student support. Students will begin to see significant changes that fall into 3 categories. First is our multiple levels of services. Students across the districts will be exposed to gifted services at some level, identified or not. Second is the addition of our Emerging Scholars Talent Development Pool. Norfolk Public Schools' first cohort this coming year will consist of 173 rising second graders. Third, the revised plan addresses the best practices of grouping gifted and talent pool students in designated cluster classrooms with a specially trained teacher. Clustering provides more full-time, challenging academics to gifted students with the potential to raise achievements of all students as it allows teachers to more effectively differentiate. To reiterate from last June's presentation, the crux of the revised plan lies in its multiple levels of service. Services are based on student readiness and addresses our belief that advanced academics and critical thinking strategies should be made available to all students. Level 1 and 2 services are available to all students in varying degrees, including push-in services, small group instruction, and the Arts and Sciences Enrichment program. Level 3 and 4 students include our new Emerging Scholars and our identified gifted students who will receive more specialized services unique to their needs. Both Level 3 and 4 students include weekly pull-out instruction by a gifted resource teacher. Thanks again to the school board backing, we will strive to help schools with successful implementation of these upcoming changes. Some of the supports in place include full-time GRTs, or gifted resource teachers, at almost every elementary school, ongoing professional development provided to teachers, administrators, and staff, including quarterly cluster teacher training, more equitable enrichment opportunities across the district through the Arts and Sciences Enrichment program. An administrator manual is being developed for schools with such things as cluster classroom observation checklists, GRT and cluster teacher expectations, and an identification process chart. We also plan to continue our collaboration with the College of William & Mary's Center for Gifted Education, who have been providing us consulting, including helping us to develop a robust professional development plan. Next year, they would continue providing professional development and begin evaluating the rollout of our new services. Transitioning now to the technical review process, VDOE regulations directs all divisions to submit a school board approved copy of its local plan to a review committee comprised of gifted administrators from across the state. This is to ensure compliance. Norfolk Public Schools plan was reviewed this past November and December. As a whole, Norfolk Public Schools local plan met the VDOE requirements. However, the review committee did have a few comments regarding Part 3 of the local plan, which is screening, identification, and service procedures. Some of their concerns were due to technicalities, such as boxes needing checked. Others were questions surrounding equity that can be resolved through further explanation, thus adding clarifying text within our plan. I'll begin with the easy fixes. The review committee pointed out that the visual performing arts and the general intellectual aptitude identification requires at least 3 criteria. Norfolk does comply with this recommendation, but the submitted template boxes were missing check marks, which are now checked. Regarding the NPS screening ID committee makeup, this also was a technical glitch and rectified with a check mark. The technical review committee questioned whether NPS puts too much emphasis on test results, possibly creating a barrier to underrepresented populations. Norfolk Public Schools uses a tiered system when processing test results. This determines criteria needed for decision-making on identification. In practice, Norfolk Public Schools' tiered system allows us to catch a wider net, affording more students the opportunity to show strengths not measured accurately by the assessment alone, and includes additional criteria such as student work or interviews if scores do not meet the benchmarks. Therefore, we included a clarifying bullet of text in this section of the local plan. We do describe this tiered process in a letter sent home to parents, another concern expressed by the committee. A copy of the letter has been added as an addendum to the local plan for reference. Next, the committee wanted to ensure Norfolk Public Schools utilizes the same documents when considering eligibility. All students follow the same procedures and the same 3 criteria, which are test scores, teacher observations, and parent checklists, are applied initially. Those students whose test scores do not meet the benchmarks will have additional criteria considered, such as interviews and portfolios. The committee also questioned a bullet of text which noted that because since Norfolk Public Schools screens all first graders each February, first grade referrals were not needed. This is not completely accurate, as we do accept referrals for first grade students who move into Norfolk Public Schools after the screening. Therefore, additional text was added that says first grade referrals are accepted for late enrollment. Lastly, the review committee asked us how we support underrepresented populations that do not have the higher percentile scores on ability tests. And as mentioned, Norfolk Public Schools uses multiple criteria. For students who may not score well on tests, we incorporate student work, interviews, and observations. Furthermore, Norfolk Public Schools is meeting this issue of representation head-on by incorporating our Emerging Scholars Talent Pool. Starting next year, every school will see at least 15% of their rising second graders receiving either level 3 or level 4 services, which will include another 15% in grade 3 and in grade 4 by year 3 of the new plan. All emerging scholars will be reevaluated for gifted services in grade 4, ideally increasing identification counts from every school. As we have resolved the concerns and recommendations from the VDOE Technical Review Committee, we are asking the school board to please accept and approve the edits to the plan at their May 18th business meeting. Please note that there have been no significant changes made to the plan. We are simply following protocol to ensure transparency when any change is made. I will also be presenting these technical review findings at our next Gifted Education Advisory Committee meeting, which will be this coming Tuesday on May 10th. In the meantime, Norfolk Public Schools has taken steps to ensure new services are successfully rolled out. We have just determined our first cohort of emerging scholars based on the February Universal Screener. In March, I presented to all the elementary principals and assistant principals to ensure they are prepared for these upcoming changes. Since I have been collaborating with the College of William & Mary, Drs. Tracy and Jennifer Cross, as well as Dr. Ashley Carpenter, accompanied me in person to help answer any questions. One of the local plan's objectives is to raise awareness and increase participation in underrepresented communities. Therefore, we have been collaborating with Family Engagement on community events, such as an upcoming Spring Fest being held at Southside STEM Academy May 12th. This event invites also St. Helena and Chesterfield elementary families with the caption, "Embrace Your Inner Genius." Our department also hosts other workshops this last year, including My Child is Gifted, Now What for elementary parents, and Anxiety and Stress in Gifted Adolescents to help secondary families. Furthermore, with the help of the College of William & Mary, we have a preliminary professional development plan for newly designated grade-level cluster teachers set to begin June 21st. This is an initial timeline regarding the rollout of our revised Gifted Local Plan. Updated benchmarks were applied to the first grade screener in February, and we have identified our first emerging scholars. We have presented the upcoming changes to administrators, and we continue to work with the William & Mary on professional development while also developing curriculum for our new emerging scholars. Next steps include cluster teachers to be selected by the end of May, with cluster teacher training to begin June 21st. Initial scheduling of cluster groups will occur over the summer, with expected changes in September after final enrollment. And finally, GRTs and cluster teachers will meet during pre-service week to review the initial lesson plans for emerging scholars and our identified gifted students, along with mapping out quarterly meetings and training. Thank you to the school board for their continued support of gifted services. I look forward to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I'll go with Ms. Campson and then Ms. Basine.
A couple of things I wanted to look at. The first, and this is a nice overview, and I'm very pleased with all the information that you gave us. My concern is that I did not see anywhere in here, as you made your decisions to make changes or update, I didn't see any link between the use of student assessment data and the changes you made. Are you using their data as you plan ahead? In other words, how do you know that your plan's working?
We will be tracking our emerging, this is our first year for our emerging scholars. We have just had this is the first year that we're coming up, we'll be implementing these services. We'll start to see the effect after this year.
But how do you determine what it is that you're doing? In other words, how did the decisions come up, and how do you assess that those were correct or the right decisions to make? It does not, I mean, I'm sure you are, I'm just saying that in what I looked at, I don't see where the link is between looking at, why do I have some students that are high gifted identified children that don't pass an SOL test? What do you do when that happens? In other words, how do you use the data to do your planning and your assessment to find out if your plan is working?
So we do look at SOL data to look at our gifted students.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I didn't see it.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, so my focus today was just on the new rollout and the new services taking place. We certainly try to keep a track, and we do keep track of our gifted services that are students that are already identified.
And I'm sure you probably do. I'm sure you do. I'm just saying that as a school board member, I'm not seeing it. And, you know, I brought this up in the fall, the same concern, that one and my concern about the Young Scholars Program. And the fact that it was not diverse at all. And that's what I thought I would be seeing today in the new plan, or the revised plan, as we move into the next school year. And I didn't see that, so that's what I want to see. What's the link? If I'm looking at the data for the Young Scholars Program, does it look the same as it looked last year as far as diversity or lack of?
The Young Scholars is actually becoming more diverse.
Well,
So we
that's-
just
thank
accepted
you.
our last cohort.
That's what I want to hear.
Our last cohort, I'll have you, we get accepted students from 18 different Norfolk public schools.
All right, see, right there,
And
that's a
2
huge
military
difference.
families from out of
Okay.
town. The year before, we accepted from 14 different, so it is, and with the emerging scholars, we are going to prepare more students across the district to become more eligible for the Young Scholars Program. So we are absolutely aware of this issue, we're addressing it, but the Young Scholars is becoming more diverse.
So down the road, we could hope to see, when you come to present from the beginning of the year, looking forward to looking back, to see that you have data that lets us know that that's happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Because 18 is a great number of schools, but we have a lot more than that, more elementary schools than that. And
Absolutely.
so, and as I said back in the fall, many of the schools, most of the schools that we see with zeros or 1 are coming out of schools that are unfortunately long-time, low-scoring schools. And that doesn't mean that those schools are not full of potential, gifted, identified children. But they have to be taught how to demonstrate that. And they're not, we have a lot of students who don't have those opportunities. And so that's why it's important to me, both when I was a principal and fought this battle, and I don't want to fight it again. I want to know and see a difference. I'm glad to see 4 more schools are on board, but that means that we still have schools sitting here in Norfolk that have not a single child who apparently was good enough or gifted enough to go into the Young Scholars Program.
And I appreciate your concern. A lot of schools didn't have any applications. We had applicants
But
from
that's
28
something,
schools.
once
Right.
again, to be addressed. If you looked at last year's data before you started interviewing the students, that would be something to have your eye on. Why? We know that they can do it. It's if a school's low performing, that's not because you have kids that are unable. It's an instructional thing. I mean, we have to be accountable for what's happening. So that's what I'm looking for, is to see that that's happening on a basis, because next year, my goal would be every school. And of those, if you're saying you have schools that have no applications, that makes me feel like crying. Because those,
I'm not happy about it either, but I am happy that we've increased.
well, yes, and so that's the kind of thing I want to hear, you know, what are you, not right now in a long detail, but I want to know what's happening to make that a go. And I also brought up and am interested in, if from the information you've received and the data you have, are we still thinking that we can't expand that program? If we have so many children that are demonstrating high gifted, and do a great job, but you only have so many slots.
Right.
Why wouldn't you increase the number of slots to have all those children in it?
Ms. Campson, Dr. Birdsong wants to comment.
Oh, okay.
So we heard the board last year, you know, regarding concerns about underrepresentation. So that was the primary reason that we are excited about this Emerging Scholars Program. In every building, not some buildings, not a select buildings, but in all schools, we will be looking at the top 15% of their children, whether they're gifted, identified, or not. If the children meet the criteria to be identified as gifted, that is wonderful and great. Say, for example, the 5% of the 15% were identified. Those other 10% will be a part of this Emerging Scholars Program, so they will have access to this gifted instruction and opportunities so they can demonstrate their giftedness. Then they'll be retested again at the 4th grade level. And then hopefully, and again, this is new, a new program, we're confident that we'll be able to increase the identification of our children in all schools. So we've heard you, we're listening, and that is the primary purpose of this program.
And that's what I want to hear, but I want to remind people that there was a time in Norfolk Public Schools where you had the gifted and then you had the next 10%. And that was an identified 10% who received special services. I led those things when I was a reading specialist, where we pulled that, here are those 5% and then the next 10%, what do you do in your building for them? And we had to report on that. I don't know, it just kind of faded away. And that's, so it sounds
coming
like
back
that's
to
what,
light.
sounds like that's what you're trying to do now.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
I'm just saying, I want to see, you know how I am, I want to see results. You know,
Me too.
I want to know where they are, and I would still like, and I certainly not now at this last second, I would have not asked for it, and I should have done it sooner. I just assumed that would have been in the presentation at this time because I'd asked for it in the fall. So that's what I will be looking at, is I want to see an effort to expand young scholars,
Okay.
and then I want to see what the effort's going to look like as a part of this emerging. Maybe I can be invited sometime to watch something. It's just so for myself, because I see this as something that's been not cared for so long. We need to do everything we can for our low-performing students, but we can't forget the kids up here. So,
I agree.
and thank you so much for answering the questions, and let me see some data sometime.
We will certainly.
Thanks, Ms. Campson. Ms. Basine, did you have a question?
Yes, so I had a couple of questions, and I did want to also piggyback on something Ms. Campson just said. You know, through our accountability plan, we had, over the years, been intentional about looking at different subgroups, and gifted students was one of the subgroups that we did say and affirm, you know, that we want to monitor to see how they're performing on SOLs and other student data. So I think I too want to see, you know, I think everybody here wants to see how our students in these different subgroups are performing. So first, and secondly, I want to say I'm really proud of the work Gears is doing, and proud of the administration and the GIAC, who's all come together to support the work that's being done to ensure or make progress toward providing equitable opportunities for our students. And so I want to say that first and foremost. I do have a couple of questions. So with the PD that is being done, does it also include, was there any feedback from the technical reviewers about providing, you know, culturally responsive training as part of, like what Ms. Campson was saying, some of the characteristics that students who may not be exposed in the same way, you know, from different socioeconomic levels, they may be demonstrating gifted characteristics, but they may not look like what we tend to think, you know, early readers, you know, things like that. But they are demonstrating other characteristics. Are we, training our teachers to provide? Are we training our teachers to recognize and identify those characteristics?
So, yes, that's part of already existing, but as we work with our cluster teachers, that's forefront of part of the training.
Okay.
Gifted versus bright, you know.
Yeah.
Gifted child is not easy to teach. There needs to be training. They are away from the norm, just like anybody else that needs unique services, and they don't follow any kind of stereotypes. So that's the training that I'm developing, and I say with William and Mary, what we're developing is, first of all, what is really a gifted child? What are their characteristics? How do we address them? How do we find them? How do we look for them in underrepresented populations? So we know stereotypically what to look for, but we need to go beyond that. What are the behaviors that are the flip side? You got the yin and the yang for the gifted students. You know, they're very inquisitive, but they also ask a lot of questions. They don't like to sit still. So how do you look at those and go, that's a gifted student, as opposed to instead of wanting to send them in the hallway? Right. So these are questions we are absolutely, or issues that we're going to be addressing in this June 21st with our new cluster teachers.
Okay.
And the more training we do, the better. We want to be part of in-school training each quarter, elementary and secondary, because absolutely, we need to send the message that gifted is a lot more than on the surface, right? And the word gifted has a misunderstanding as well. So we want to educate really what that means. It's for everybody. It's not just for certain people.
Right.
And that's why we're doing these events in some of these communities, because we want them to embrace being smart, be excited about it.
Right.
It's not about, it's, you know, love who you are, whatever gifts you have. And if that's academic, great, we want to help, we want to be there for you.
Right. And I think that's also important for any misperceptions, you know, parents and guardians have around what giftedness means. So that's really good to hear. The other question I have is if the technical reviewers came back, or just maybe aside from the technical reviewers, but your team, you know, if you're looking at the diversity of the workforce, you know, of our GRTs, you know, are we creating a diverse group of GRTs to work with our students? And
So yes, in terms of ethnicity, I think we have a very diverse team. No, not so much in the male-female. We're
Right.
kind of lopsided there, but
Right.
that's kind of the nature of education. But we are definitely working, and they're fully qualified. I'm not even working for it. They're just who applied and they're qualified. And I think we are equitably diverse. Just
Okay.
maybe a few more males.
okay. And do we still have the GRT cohort, or like are we?
We are working towards building another one
Another
starting in
one? Okay.
January. Absolutely.
Okay, great. And finally, I just wanted to clarify too. So the retesting at fourth grade, which I think is great and something I've long been advocating for, is that just for the emerging, because I thought I understood it, but emerging scholars pool, or is it all fourth graders?
It's automatically for emerging scholars.
Okay.
But any fourth grader can be referred again. So if they weren't identified gifted in first grade, but didn't fall into the emerging scholar status.
Right.
But if they're referred, they can be tested again with the emerging scholars in grade 4.
Okay.
So it
but
is
by
open to all
referral.
fourth graders,
Okay, but that would be by referral?
by referral.
Okay. Okay. I guess we'll see how what that
Right.
looks like, you know. And lastly, you know, to tie into what Ms. Campson said also, you know, I'm going to be sure that we are regularly, you know, monitoring, like that we have specific indicators, not just to see how they're performing, but to ensure that we are meeting any targets about, you know, increasing representation, increasing opportunities for those students, enrichment programs, and things like that for all of our students. So, you know, I hope we get to talk about more what those indicators look like.
And so I'll tell you right now, we have an indicator for our emerging scholars that we're putting in Synergy. So if they are an emerging scholars, they will already have an indicator, and we will be, and I don't like the word tracking because I don't want to put them in a category, but we do want to see whether or not they're identified gifted. Did 2 years of exposure in the emerging scholars help that student take perhaps more honors classes, or get into a specialty program, or move into a career of choice, become an entrepreneur, whether they're identified or not? Our goal is to give these kids 2 years of exposure of gifted pedagogy and see what effect is. And we are going to, and I hate the word track, but we're going to keep track to see if it is effective. So we will be able to, especially after this first couple years, start to see some charts. If you go to Fairfax County, they have a similar program. You'll see the effect.
Yes, right.
Huge. And that was another,
Follow
that was
that.
inspiring to me, and
Yeah.
a lot of this was based on their young scholars. They call them the young scholars,
Yeah,
but the
they-
little ones.
right,
So
yeah.
it gets confusing.
Right.
But they've had great success with their program,
Right.
and they've seen quite a significant increase, whether or not they've been identified, but they've taken honors courses, they've gone into IB programs, they've gone into four-year college, et cetera. So it
And
does
increased
have an
AP,
impact, we
yeah.
just haven't tried it here yet.
Right, yeah, and I've followed them at conferences, you know, and seen a lot of their presentations, so they've really done some good work. So I'm excited to see, you know, us trying to model some of that and do something more for our students, so, thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I also want to echo what Ms. Campson and Ms. Basine said. At least I think that's what they said about the work that that the administration and your department and the work that you all are doing. I appreciate what you brought to us last year and being able to see you work to drill down and your responses to the technical review. So I appreciate the direction and encourage you to keep moving forward in the direction that you're going. To the point about monitoring, I agree also. I think that's I think it's good to receive the gifted plans and other plans that we receive. But I think it's better for us as a governance team if we can work on our process for integrating data back into whether it's the accountability plan, if that's what we're going to do. If it's a new system that we're going to use that system. The Mr. Clanton has mentioned several times recently the equity plan has in there school by school information. I think on our end, if we can figure out a place and a calendar and a process by which we can spend some of our time, especially at work sessions, reviewing and monitoring the progress, then we can follow that. And you all can follow what we're talking about and can help inform what we're following. But I think that if we can get our focus on these areas, and we know we can't monitor everything because we've got everything in our accountability plan, but from time to time, being able to have a place where we can go and review the report or have a dashboard that we can look at, anything that would help us, I think, in our role in being able to see how the administration is helping us to reach the goals and targets that we set would be helpful. And so I don't want that to, I know it's difficult sometimes. It seems like we're asking you all these things. I think really it's on us to develop our process and monitoring philosophy and being able to do it on a whatever periodic basis that we think is appropriate, so that everybody comes in, does their presentation, doesn't feel like these questions are geared necessarily towards you to answer at a presentation. So I just think we can spend some effort on what it is that we're going to do in terms of our monitoring and how we go about doing that. But thank you again for the presentation, and I appreciate your comments and your commitment around trying to make sure that we address opportunity and issues of underrepresentation and so forth. So thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Rawson.
To piggyback on some of the comments, I think it's going to be very important, because I heard you mention Fairfax, and they're a very good school district as well. But I think it may be even more important that we look at districts that are similar to Norfolk, who are doing exceptional jobs with intellectual development and gifted education, to see what they're doing, because I think with Fairfax County, there are a lot of variables. If we unpack some of the variables in Fairfax County versus Norfolk Public Schools, you might find some things that may be the driving force, that may not be our driving force, but may be their driving force when you start looking at demographics. But there are districts, there's some districts across the country. I know Donna Ford Harris found some very strong districts when she studied gifted education and Black gifted education and improving, increasing the diversity, that she kind of, went into school districts that were doing an excellent job, that were very diverse, and then, and somewhat underrepresented districts and schools and students in poverty, but they were doing a great job in identifying gifted students. And they were specific things that they were doing to do that, to kind of grab onto that. So I think that may be a good hook for us to look at also some districts that are maybe very similar in demographics, who are doing great jobs, and to see what they're doing and how maybe we could link into that, who have similar demographics, some similar variables, that we could say, yeah, this is what we need to do. So I think that may be very healthy for us as you move on for your professional development and looking at some other models that are similar to Norfolk Public Schools.
I Agree completely.
Yeah.
I think I'd love to go out. There's a lot of tools out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of districts are doing a lot of things. But I think I need to be right in the middle of it, like you said. And
Yes.
so I'm certainly open to travel. But no, all seriousness aside, I think you're absolutely right. I need to go into the heart and talk to the people doing it. I do go to a lot of conferences. There's a lot of presentations, national conferences on the equities is huge, underrepresented. It's the gifted education hot point right now, and that's why the tech review was very, pointing out, are you sure you're equitable? Are you sure you're equitable? And so, it is a big concern, but it's one thing to say it, and you're right. Fairfax is not Norfolk, right? But there's some similarities, but like you said, it's
And I'm
different.
not discounting, yes, but I think sometimes when you're looking at similar districts, you may see similar things that they're doing that could say, ooh, I never thought about that you may not see in another district that's not totally similar to us, that you could find something in another district that's doing really well. Because some districts are doing very well, but I mean nationally, who are doing very well in this, in terms of equity and numbers and diversity, who are similar to our district.
I concur.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Clanton, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And most importantly, and I agree with a lot of things that my colleagues have said, especially in the fact that, you got some critical information that was kind of taken to by peers to look at it. And then what I really enjoyed, the fact that you were showing actionable action to immediately address it. And I like the term of services beyond a label. And when I was looking at page 45 of the actual bigger plan, and there was something that I saw was the developmental factors, and a pointing scale on that one, age, physical size, and like motor coordination, some other things that were kind of all put in there. And then I saw your red line, and what you were doing in regards to parents and their behavior and checklist and some of the other things that are in there. But I like the idea, and I loved, and I want, just like Ms. Campson, to see the information that comes back, because it's not just what's, I see what we're doing in the classroom. I guess what I'm getting to is that there's another component of this that I haven't heard yet, and that is, what are we doing to support parents so that the children can be successful who are identified or potentially identified as gifted? Because it's a teamwork thing. It's not just what happens inside that classroom, but when I'm looking back at some of these other items that are listed here, the parents are going to play a critical role in ensuring the success of that student through that process. And so I don't know if you have some things you've thought about, or if that's something that's coming back there, but I see what we're doing in the classroom. Great. I see what we're expanding it. But what are we going to do to support parents so that they can ensure that their students are going to be successful who have been identified gifted? Because we can't just assume that every parent is going to know or be in a social demographic that can support. What type of supports are we going to offer those parents to ensure the student success?
Absolutely agree. It takes a village, right? And so we really, part of the local plan, one of our goals and objective is to increase awareness, really. A lot of it's just awareness or a misunderstanding of what gifted is. And we're starting that process. As I mentioned, we are working with family engagement in some of these Title I schools. We have the specialists meeting with the gifted resource teachers. They're planning events. There was something at Jaycox already. They had their outdoor event where they had a gifted table. She was passing out all kinds of information. Parents were interested. They don't know. So when we go to Camp Estella, I'm going to have the young scholars there. The North Star is going to be, Governor's School of the Arts are going to be there. They're going to expose those parents to all these different offers. But it's going to take a while, right? But I'm very aware of that. And so communication is key. We definitely need to get more information out. I do hear at the GAC meetings that parents don't know or they don't hear about things. So we do need to do a better job. And that is on my expectations for the gifted research teachers next year. We're going to do more meetings, more workshops. We're going to send out more information, et cetera. So absolutely noted, and I agree.
Definitely, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that the GAC mentioned something to you, and that you're bringing that back to the board. Just a,
No one else is inside joke.
but but it's important. It's not at you. It's just
Okay.
the board has had a conversation.
You're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing.
I don't know what it is.
But we want to make sure we close that loop and make sure that everyone who's involved in this process, who are bringing recommendations to this board, that we're closing that loop and that we're communicating through the budget, through policy, through these reports and the actions that the administration's taking here, that we hear you and that we're taking actions that are going to bring about change that's going to better support all of our students. I was one of those kids who, single parent home, was identified gifted. I didn't go to Stewart, but I went to the governor's school. I will never forget going into the 9th grade at Maury High School, and I was just in regular oral history. And my teacher came to me and she said, you really should consider going into honors or moving up. And I'll be honest, I was terrified. I was like, I don't know if I should be in this thing here. But it takes great teachers. My mom encouraged me. But as we do Parent University and all these other things, it's about exposure, and you're doing that, and I hear that. Many times it's one exposure opportunity, one field trip. I hope that when we talk about budget, how we can increase funding to expose our students to things that they don't have. That one field trip could change the life of a student. So as we start looking at additional funding, because that's where it comes at to the board, how we can change in our budget to ensure that we offer those opportunities there. So I commend you for the work that you're doing here. Definitely look forward to seeing more and how we can support that on the end of gifted, as well as we start talking about special education and all, but how we make it better for all our students.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I want to point out a couple of things from Mr. Clanton's observations and questions. I'd like Ms. Stead to speak a little bit more about, you mentioned my child is gifted, now what? I think the board would benefit from some more information about that workshop, to your point, and also to the point about, are we listening to our GIAC committee members and their recommendations? Yes, we are. Within this year's budget, for example, we added 5 additional gifted resource teachers to that budget. In addition, we added some enrichment programming for children, and if you can speak more to that,
Sure.
I think that would be beneficial to the board as well.
Sure. So first, going to the workshop, so we are definitely, one of the workshops that I had asked the GRTs to present, especially for our newly identified students, parents are like, well, what does that mean? There's a lot of misconceptions. So these were held locally at the schools. This wasn't a district-wide initiative. This was at the school level where they would invite parents and say, hey, your student is identified, here's what to expect. And then look at the behaviors and how to support them, et cetera. We need to do a better, maybe we need to do a district one, that's on my to-do list, maybe a district-wide at the beginning of the year as well. Maybe we start big and then they go into the small ones. So we'll do a better job at that. So we're gonna increase the workshops. GIAC was the other thing, how we're working with, so I'm meeting with them on the 10th. We meet regularly. I do listen to them. I'm excited. We got a full roster, ideally, with our new application process, and we are more diverse. I can say that, so I'm happy about that. And I'm looking forward to working with these parents. And so there's a little bit of onboarding, because they're new, so I have to kind of tell them what we're about and our goals are. But from what I've met, and I've met them, most of the applicants, because we've invited them to our last couple of meetings, they're eager to help with our goals of equity, representation, services for everyone, and meeting all students' needs, the higher-ups and the ones that just need more exposure. So they are on board. There's a lot, now it's just a learning process, a learning curve. But they are, I think, excited. We're putting together our letter to the board in June. And so we'll be working on that when we meet Tuesday, which is our first in-person advisory committee meeting in 2 years. So we're excited. I've had members I've had a relationship with I've never seen beyond lower than the neck. So I'm looking forward to meeting them. We're going to start working on the letter so we have something very detailed, eloquent, and makes sense to present to the board on June 15th, 16th, in the middle of June. So excited about GIAC. They are on board. They want what's best for the district, for sure.
And the Arts and Sciences
The Arts and
program?
Sciences Enrichment Program, yes. So we're also excited to bring, this used to be a program at Norfolk Public Schools years ago. And what it is, it's monitored by our department, but it's not just for gifted students. It's really about exposure to, would be level 1 service on our multi-level services approach. This is an opportunity for all kids across the district to participate in some enrichment activity, whether it's after school or part of a school enrichment time, et cetera. But so we have asked for funding to bring the Arts and Sciences program back so that it would be managed from our department, so we would fund the teacher sponsors and buy the materials and pay for field trips like you're talking about, because that is part of the arts and sciences program, to give those kids exposure, to build the interest, to give them the carrot to want to come to school. And you know, so that is definitely on the forefront of our local plan. So I'm excited about the arts and science, bringing it back. And I want to build it as much as possible and provide those students as much as exposure. And Governor's School for the Arts, they're on board. They want to start coming to our elementary schools because they know that you need to start earlier, right? Exposure, so it seems real to them. Some of these students, right? So that's all. You know, I just can't make it happen yet. You know, it's going to take time. And this last year was a building time all around, right? We came from a pandemic, and then we have a new gifted local plan. So I'm looking forward to normal, whatever that looks like, and to keep growing the local plan, especially when we you know, thank you for approving the additional GRTs and the arts and sciences budget, because we're going to use that to really grow and do the things that I think I hear you saying you want to do. It's just, I just need a little more time, a little more money.
Well, we're out of time on this topic, but I just want to thank you again, Mrs. Stead, for coming here and preparing this presentation to us. And I think the discussion was really, really helpful. I just appreciate that you've been listening to what we've been asking for, and of course and communicating your needs to be able to grow the program as we have been talking about as a board, and also being open to stakeholder input. So the peer review, the statewide peer review, the committee, the GAC committee, and you know, the parental and all of the input that you've been open to grow this program, and it's really exciting. I feel like we're really turning the corner on this program and the expansion of it to all of our students, and so I really look forward to all of your progress over the next year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Okay, up next we have item 3.02 with Dr. Gibson. It's our Norfolk Public School 2022 summer school programs.
All right.
which means the countdown begins, right?
Right.
Good evening, Dr. Gibson.
Good evening, School Board Chair Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Mr. Clanton, Superintendent Dr. Birdsong, and board members. This evening I will share our plans for summer school programs for 2022. And I am left-handed, so I'm going to have to use the mouse. Thank you. Clicking it. Thank you. While most summer programs will begin June 27th and run through the 3rd or 4th week of July, the high school summer program will also begin on June 27th, but will end on August 2nd. Programming will include district-wide programs offered by the Department of Learning Support, English learner programs for students in grades K through 8, a summer STARS camp, which was once called our Basic Skills Program, and Summer STARS Camp means Successful Thinkers or Ready Students. This camp will have both basic skills and enrichment opportunities. The LEAP and 21st Century programs will also be provided to schools, to certain students at certain schools. The high school summer courses, enrichment and preparation courses, and career and technical education experiences will be a part of our summer program. Enrollment campaigns are underway. Applications for programs are available online and at the schools for pickup. All programs are offered at no cost to students, and we are working to ensure that all students are able to attend a program of their choice. The district-wide programs will provide instruction in self-contained settings. Students identified as eligible for the extended school year program will participate in learning activities focused on the developmental skills in the area of oral language, school readiness, social-emotional skills, and motor skills. Students served in district-wide autism, intellectual disability, and multiple disability classrooms will have an opportunity to participate in activities focused on their language, vocabulary, and social skills. There will also be a summer transition academy to provide current postgraduate students the opportunity to increase their career readiness and job development skills. Parents will also have the opportunity to attend informational workshops on a weekly basis to familiarize themselves with agencies and programs that support students with disabilities. Our English learner programs will consist of 3 classroom settings: Welcome to School, Elementary English Learners Newcomers programs, and Middle Step Ahead programs. The Welcome to School program is for rising kindergartners who have a home language other than English and who are newly arrived to the United States. Students will focus on school readiness and academic language. For grades K through 5, our ESL teachers will provide intense English language instruction to build academic language and urgent vocabulary. In our middle school grades 6 through 8, the program will be designed to provide English learners foundational content skills and English language development. Beyond subject area vocabulary, there will also be a strong focus on the functional nature of language necessary for academic success. Each week will include a language-based content area focus and will culminate in a project-based learning assignment. Technology skills for school will also be a component of the program. Please note that we will include our English learners in pre-K through 12 programs at all of our school sites, and they will receive inclusion support. Our preschool students will explore early learning with a focus on literacy and numeracy, arts, science, interactive technology, and social-emotional learning. Our Summer Stars Camp will enroll students in need of additional instruction, as well as in students who desire to continue learning within their zone school clusters during the summer. Reading, writing, and math will be taught on a daily basis. Kindergarten through 5th grade students will experience literacy lessons that provide students joyful, high-quality literacy experiences and cultivate reading, writing, and communicating through 7 strengths. And those strengths are belonging, curiosity, kindness, friendship, confidence, courage, and hope. And this is where our SEL, our social-emotional learning, will be embedded into our academic instruction. History, science, art, music, and physical education will also be incorporated into the summer program. And again, our inclusion students for special education as well as English learners will be able to attend and receive support in these programs. Our Summer Stars Camp for middle schoolers will consist of a 4-week, 2-session program. Eligible middle school students will receive intensive instruction in the 4 core subject areas. Priority will be given to students who failed no more than 2 academic courses. However, students who did pass but still need help will be eligible to attend. Students with disabilities and English learners, again, will receive their support in the inclusion setting. The Career and Technical Education Department will send in career and technical education teachers each week to further support those core subjects through STEM activities, where we will be doing cross-disciplinary activities to make learning relevant and fun for our students. We will have Summer Leap this year, and we will host schools with Summer Leap, working to encourage our students in the morning with their basic skills and their core subjects, and then in the afternoon, they will be able to participate in enrichment activities that include hands-on experiences and field trips. New to us this year, in terms of the presentation, but not in terms of what's going on in our schools during the summer, St. Helena, Suburban Park, and James Monroe will host their 21st century programs, where their students, part of their students in the mornings, will be in a grant-sponsored program where they will have hands-on activities, interactive activities, along with field trips. That will be in addition to the Norfolk Public Schools K-5 program that will run there, where Suburban Park and Willard students will be able to attend our Summer Stars Camp for K-5. This year, we're doing something phenomenal in our high school summer program. Based on feedback from our school principals, our teachers, and working with our executive director, the high school summer program is going to be designed for students who need to recover credit as well as want to take a course for initial credit. Credit recovery courses will be offered through GradPoint, and there will be a hybrid in-person course for credit recovery as well. Only seniors will be able to enroll in the GradPoint courses for initial credit. All students will be able to enroll in initial credit for our hybrid sessions in terms of it being in-person, synchronous, virtual, and asynchronous, all at the same time. Our students will have 2 high school sites to attend. At each site, one group will go on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then they will be online in person on Wednesdays and Thursdays. The other group, we will switch that so that they will have 2 days of in-person and 2 days of online. Those students who are doing initial credit will also have the 2 days in person, 2 days online, but then Monday through Thursday, they will have asynchronous activities to further extend and build their learning to ensure that we're covering the course standards and being able to award that initial credit. Norfolk Public Schools will continue its offerings in enrichment programs. The Summer Art Music Advanced Placement Summer Academy, Junior University, Camp Einstein, English Learner programs will be hosted at Willard. In addition to that, in our middle school grades, our math preparation courses will also run for those students who will be rising 6th graders who will want to take pre-algebra 6, our 7th graders or 8th graders taking algebra 1, our 8th graders who are going to be taking geometry, and then some of our rising 9th graders who will be going into high school taking the credit-bearing algebra 1, geometry, or algebra 2. And we've run those programs for years along with health and physical education for students who, while they are in middle school, they can take preparation courses to be ready to start the year and have a solid run as they work through those courses. The Career and Technical Education Department will provide various experiences and activities for students in grades 3 through postgraduate levels. Students in grades 3 through 7 will be able to attend the Green STEM Summer Experience. Cyber camps focused on STEM and career exploration will be offered at various locations. Summer work-based learning experiences and credential boot camps will also be available. For secondary and postgraduate students and those needing to complete the general equivalency diploma requirements, there will be programs for those students. GED will be offered through ISAPE, and CTE through its NTC and virtual offerings will be able to support students preparing to have their credentialing test. Eligible students for the GED at the end of the summer who are ready to test will be able to take the GED test. In the summer of 2020, the summer school enrollment was 100% virtual due to the pandemic and schools closing. In the summer of 2021, Norfolk Public Schools operated, for the most part, an in-person summer program that enrolled 7,677 students. This year, at no cost to students, Norfolk Public Schools is working to enroll over 10,000 students into the summer learning programs. Our human resource generalists are working closely with building principals, executive directors, and division chiefs to secure teachers and staff. We encourage parents to enroll their children in summer school, and we look forward to providing a quality educational opportunity for each and every child as we work to achieve equity and excellence here in our school division. Thanks so much for your time and attention. I'm excited about summer school, as is our cabinet, and we're hoping our families will be as well. We'll take questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. I have a quick question. So the summer programs are on the website. Is that all updated?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything on the website is updated.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Campson, go ahead, and then Mr. Clanton.
I have to say that I am amazed. I mean, when I think about what summer school used to look like, that you have so many specialized programs that I can't imagine there's any child that couldn't find something to do in the system. I'm amazed. It's really great. It does what we should have always done. It's taken what we know our kids know at the end of the year, what they need, the different kinds of particular programs. We're not just doing a general reading class and a general science class, that you and your team have developed a program that really touches base with what any child would need at this time. So I don't really have any questions. I just
But thank you so much.
want to
for that.
congratulate you on this program.
It's not something I did. It's a team effort,
Yeah,
academic
it's always a
affairs,
team effort,
yes,
yes.
school leadership development, and each of the divisions coming together. And Human Resources Department going that extra mile for us. They're constantly emailing our schools and working with us. It's truly been a team effort, and it's been a pleasure to work with the
Congratulations,
team to pull this off.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you.
And it takes great leadership to do that.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
But you
Mr.
do need a
Clanton,
team.
Dr.
then
Birdsong.
Mr. Jordan.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Gibson. I echo the sentiments of my colleague. I'm really excited about this. And my nephew called me yesterday, and he was like, Uncle C, he was asking about summer. And so I hope he's watching, and he knows now the opportunities he's got this summer. There were a couple quick things that are kind of in the middle of the lines that I just want to kind of have you to kind of draw out for me and for those who are watching. I want to highlight the point that you said, no cost. No cost to our students, to our families. Can you elaborate, and maybe Mr. Jenkins or else, what funding source we're using to
We're
help
using
support
CARES
this?
funds to
Okay.
pay for summer school. This is a part of the funds the government has given us to support learning loss and to support education. And so we are going to continue for the second year to use CARES funds.
Okay. And so, Mr. Jenkins, I know you're there. Is there specific CARES funds that we're using in this one?
I think we're using a lot of the ARPA money and
ARPA.
some of the CRS.
Okay. Great. And in showing that no cost, we've got to transport people there. Are we still providing food, nutrition over the summer? Can you highlight some of those other things that we're supporting our students with?
Yes, we're supporting, of course, the staff payment. We have to pay for transportation. School, child nutrition services is going to be free again this year so that all of our children and families will be able to eat. We're paying for supplies. We've given school supplies stipends for each child in each school. In our innovation programs, we provided funds there for the enrichment so that those children going to enrichment can have the materials and supplies that they need, as well as those children going to basic skills. We've placed funds there. So each school receives an allocation based on projected enrollment. We used the enrollment from last year because it was a robust enrollment to be able to place funds in each school this year so that people could order. Those funds were available as early as the beginning of March, so people would have time to order because, you know, now it takes a long time for things to be delivered.
Okay, great.
Is there anything else I need to add in terms of what we're covering with pay?
Okay, great. I just had, I really wanted to draw on this CDP post-secondary transition program. That's the first time I've heard of that, and you were using this as a summer opportunity. So these are for students who have just graduated. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on what
Those
that
are
is like?
self-contained programs for students with disabilities.
Okay.
And this is a service that would ordinarily happen through the transition and the IEP that the students continue to have once they're finished the first part of, but when they get ready to go to the post-high school part of their education, Norfolk Public Schools continues with transition services. So that CDP class, and I think Dr. Walter is the expert there, she could probably explain it much better than I can, but that time is to help them prepare to know what some of the next steps are going to be. Would you like to further elaborate, Dr.?
So our students with disabilities, as you know, are eligible for services through the age of 21. They've not graduated with the standard or advanced diploma by that point. So some of our students do continue, with their high school education past that point, and they do participate in our post-grad program. Those are students that participate like in our Project Search internship program, our SOS students. So we do have CDP classrooms for them. They can participate in the summer school program. Those are IEP-driven programs where they receive extended school year services, and so we do set up services for them through the summer where they explore career opportunities. They have career development services. As you heard, we set up parent workshops and things like that. We set up agency supports where they work with DARs. They explore culinary opportunities. So we try to set up a rich program for them over the summer to explore independent living and things like that. But those are IEP-driven services.
Great. And I say thank you on that one. I know this works. My oldest nephew is a recipient who benefited from that, and he went through that program, was working at Centerra Norfolk General, and now he's full-time working there at Centerra Norfolk General, so I thank you, and I thank all those in special education. I just want to, as I close up my comments here, is that for those who look at this presentation, and what I take away is that this is an intentional summer school program that is for every student in Norfolk Public Schools. So when we talk about equity and excellence, this is what this looks like. I know in the past you probably have heard about Camp Einstein and some of these other things that just kind of highlighted certain groups and not really hearing about other opportunities. But when I look at this, this is something that's going to be exciting for children and students throughout the summer that will meet everyone where they are and begin to continue that learning curve. As we know, summertime is one of the times when we have great loss, but it's an opportunity to keep that going so that they're ready and prepared. And I won't take any more time, but I'm quite sure that you'll come back and talk about as we measure the success over the summer and how that helps us in the fall. Thanks.
Yes, I want to say impressive also in terms of all the different varied programming. I do want to ask, will it be made very clear that students will be getting, because I see that Southside STEM Academy is not a site for 6 through 8, for grade 6 through 8. So that population would have to take up, if they're interested in the Summer Stars Camp 6 through 8, they would have to go to one of the middle school sites.
No, Southside STEM is K-8. There's a K-5 program, there's also a 6-8 program. And so they have they're a standalone. So it's Lake Taylor. We're not moving them out of their school community. They also have a technology focus. So CTE will be working with Southside STEM and Lake Taylor School in terms of making sure that that technology is also infused into their program. But they have their whole school program.
So is that made clear up here? Because I see K-5 and I see Southside STEM Academy. So I see that K-5.
Is this the site in the middle?
I had the same question.
Is the site the middle column?
Well, it says K-5.
It's probably not clear
at the
to you,
physical
but
site.
it is clear to the to Southside STEM. We have staffed them for middle and elementary. We've also made sure that their middle school program has a center leader. Their elementary school program also has a center leader, so that the needs on those two levels can be addressed and met in terms of supporting that instruction and the learning in those places. But at Southside STEM and Lake Taylor School, those are K-8 programs.
Okay, so how could that be clarified more? Because looking at this, I see Summer Stars K-5, and of course I see Southside. I see it, but I'm seeing K-5. And then of course I see 6-8, but of course I don't see Southside STEM Academy under that. What can we do to make that, because that was kind of my question, but because since you said it will, how can we make that?
Yeah,
Because
I
if
had
I
the
was a
same
parent looking
question.
at this, I wouldn't be, unless the school was telling me that I would see K-5, Southside, and I say 6-8, and I see, the middle school, the schools there. So I wouldn't know that STEM Academy.
There's a different chart on the website that.
Oh, it is? Different than this?
Yes.
There is a different chart on the
Okay.
website, but because you posed that question, we're going to make sure that we communicate that K-8
Yes.
is at Southside and Lake Taylor School, and they have the same services and opportunities as other children. We're going to look at making sure that that is communicated. Thank you for bringing that to my
Thank you,
attention.
Dr. Gibson.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Jordan?
Thank you also. Just, I guess I have some technical questions. In the presentation, when I was looking at it, it appeared to me that some schools are sometimes in bold and others are not. Is that intentional?
That is intentional.
Tell me what that's supposed to tell me.
If you look at the lines where one school's bold and one is not, the bold school is the host site.
Okay.
And you look at the other lines, you have one school there because it's a standalone. So if you go to slide,
Can you go to slide 6, for example?
yes, if you go to slide 6. Here, you have Granby and Camp Allen. Granby is the host school. The children at Camp Allen will go to Granby, and they will blend to have summer school. You look at Chesterfield, it's a LEAP school. Chesterfield, Jaycox, PB Young, Tidewater Park, they're LEAP schools. When you look at James Monroe, that's a 21st century school. St. Helena's a 21st century school. Suburban Park is is going to have Willard in their program, but it's also a 21st century, but their 21st century program will run independently from the blended suburban park and Willard's Summer Stars Camp, because of the grant stipulations that that group of children that they've worked with all year be in that summer enrichment. But that's why some of them are bold. Each one that's bold, that is the school that is going to host. That's the school site this year.
Okay, yeah, that was helpful, but it was throwing me because I figured it meant something.
Great question. It meant something.
I just couldn't figure
yes.
out what it meant.
Yes,
Okay.
and we
We
start
probably
with
should
the
have
Campus
noted
Stella.
that. We should
yes.
have noted that with an asterisk, so we.
Similar on
It's
the
only pre-K. It's a
At the
pre-K
same
site.
on that same point. Can you go to slide 10? Because I wanted to get clarification on that slide too. So I know now that Lake Taylor High and Norview High being bold means that the other schools would go there.
That's correct.
So then on the course platforms, all those courses are available at those
both
two
places.
sites.
Yes.
Okay. And then on that same slide where it references Open Campus in Madison being virtual programs, is that for the existing student enrollment that they have, or is
That's
that?
for the children who end the year with them, who need to, at Open Campus's place, they need to continue to work to gain their credits. And from what I was told today, Open Campus is a virtual program, but they do have in-person check-ins. So the building will be open, they will have a staff, and the children will be able to go and to check in to get help as they need it. At Madison, that program is there for students who they end the year at Madison and they're going to start the year at Madison, but we still need to provide them with an educational opportunity over the summer. So in their case, they will most likely be in a virtual program of some type where they're online with their teachers.
But for the most part, in those two cases, at least I guess in Madison's case, it's not. It's existing students who are in the program now that during the summer would have access to virtual programming during the summers. I mean,
Yes.
nobody can enroll in Madison in a virtual program.
Right, we're not going to place
Right.
children at Madison over the summer. We
Okay.
just want to make sure that we're getting them ready. They're not going to be there forever. We're getting them ready to go back to their zone schools. We want them to go back with as much credit and as many good grades as possible.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted to get clarity. Then with preschool, is it the same scenario where we have the preschool sites? Are these existing preschool students, or is the opportunity to enroll new pre-K students in these pre-K classes?
I'm going to start that answer, and then I'm going to let Dr. Cito finish the answer.
Okay.
Summer school is going to be, right now, is currently enrolled students as far as I know, but when you get to English learners and you get to pre-K, you might have a different situation there, so I'm going to let her speak to that.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
For preschool, it is for currently enrolled preschool students for this particular summer, and it's for our four-year-olds. So the purpose of the program is to support their ongoing learning, hands-on play experiences over the summer. So they will have literacy camp along with numeracy, and we're also doing a great program called the Flying Classroom that provides them with hands-on STEM activities. So we are really excited, and the sites work the same way. We will have host sites, and we will have feeder schools going into those sites. Thank you.
And Easton is going to be at Ingleside, because we know Easton is transitioning, but Easton those students will still have their learning opportunity. It will be housed at Ingleside.
And on the enrollment projections, the enrollment is, can you talk about what your assessment has been of existing student data that is telling us, like, of the 10,000 or so that you're projecting, those that would be have received letters or receive letters saying it's recommended that you attend versus those who are opting into the programming that you have?
Okay, I can answer that partially because I have not received, I don't have record right now of who actually has committed to summer school. But based on what we did last year in terms of our enrollment, we had about half of our students in enrichment and about half of them in some type of basic skills program. So in looking at those trends, we can predict our classes are going to fill 1 to 15 on average in each of our subject areas or grade levels. However, we can't tell you how many basic skills students we're going to have until we actually know in K-5 how many of the parents have accepted the invitation for their children to attend. In middle school, how many of the children have to go in order to be promoted. And then in high school, how many of the children are going to take advantage of catching up or getting ahead. We are really pushing and recruiting, just as we did last year. We were able to get past the 7,600 mark. We're hoping this year that we can do the same thing, because it's at no cost. This is our second year, and then we have next year where we'll be able to do the same thing. So we're trying to be proactive, really engaging our students and their parents to take advantage of the learning opportunity at no cost now. So just hope, and the trend from last year in terms of getting the children in. And we did have to turn away. We had children on the waiting list last year. So as we started earlier this year, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to enroll everybody who wants to come. The other piece is staffing. We had a waiting list because we didn't have staffing. So we have to really convince our bus drivers, our teachers, service workers to come in and to help us out.
And last question, for the programs that we have that are, I guess the enrichment programs, I imagine, are more exposure and exploration. But for the programs that, maybe I'll ask it this way, do we have student outcome goals for each program? So
in our basic skills program, we have to have student outcome goals. In our middle school, for example, our curriculum coordinators are going to develop a curriculum in terms of the standards that the children need to really be able to understand and grasp to move to the next level of learning. So we will have a very focused and intentional curriculum on each grade level that addresses the content strands and standards that we want the children to brush up on, improve on, learn, so that they can go to the next level. We'll use our end of the year STAR data as we did last year. In some cases, we'll use the SOL data. From there, we will build and get to the end of the year. Last summer, we had post-assessments in our basic skills program. So in our Summer Stars camp, we will again have those post-assessments. In our initial credit courses, we have to develop end of course exams that show the children have mastered the content and the standards in those initial credit. In Grad Point, they come with modules and assessments, and the other courses that are offered through WHRO, Desire to Learn, they come with assessments, and they also take a WISE exam, which is one of their requirements for graduation. So yes, we do have assessment components in place that will allow us to show that our children are demonstrating growth, or to show us as we spiral into the next school year what we need to do for those children. In addition to that, Mr. Jordan, this year we've had Admentum. So as our children go into summer school, they will have their own individual learning paths. So we'll be able to keep them on their learning path and provide them some individualized instruction as they progress through the summer.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Go ahead, Ms. Basine.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson, and thank you for all of the the information that you've presented regarding the summer programs. I had a similar question to Dr. Rowson about that one slide with about Southside STEM, and so I appreciate the clarification. So piggybacking on what Mr. Jordan just asked, so when I was looking at the data, so for those students who failed 2 or more classes, and especially some of our students in those transition years where we see this increase in challenge, at 6th grade, 9th grade. So can you speak a little bit about how you're recruiting those students into these programs? Are those the students that you're talking about were invited to participate, or can you speak a little more about that?
We did template letters for the schools to use so that as they identify students who needed to attend summer school based on failing 2 or more subjects, based on their SOL scores, or based on some other type of learning struggle that the child is having, the teachers could check exactly the areas where the children needed help. We could ask the parent to send their children to summer school. In K-5, it's a much bigger encouragement than it is when you hit the secondary level. In middle school, we want every child to pass. We want that middle school experience to be a 3-year experience, moving then to high school. So we are telling the children, we're telling their parents, we're letting them know, if you come to summer school and you meet the criteria to pass in summer school, you will be promoted. That is something we're constantly in Norfolk Public Schools looking for ways to have our children progress to their next level of learning. And we're going to continue to do that, but we do have to word things and phrase them in a manner that's conducive to our parents wanting to work with us. In the past, we've not had a big problem on our secondary level, especially in middle school, getting them to come and to do the work to pass. In elementary last year, we had larger numbers, so we're looking again. Our parents also see and they know that these 2 years have been very difficult. So working with them, encouraging them, letting them know this is what we need to do. We don't want to get 2 years from now and all our children are behind, or big numbers of them are behind, because that's going to kill the culture in our schools, and we don't want to disenfranchise our students.
Okay. I appreciate that. And staffing, it sounds like, so as far as staffing goes, we know this year has been, much more challenging than the year before. And do you have a sense right now, what that might look like?
Our HR generalists started early, and they have begun this week. They're sending reminders to principals. You have this many openings. These people have signed their hiring letter. These people have confirmed they're coming. So we do have a sense of it. In some schools, it's better than others. But I would tell you this, we had 18 security officer positions, and they've all been filled. So we're ahead in our bus driver numbers. We're not quite there yet, but we're ahead in our bus driver commitment. So we're working this next month trying to get all of those positions filled.
Okay, and we're required to have nurses too, right?
Every school has a nurse, has a nursing staff
Okay.
member on board, and I've just emailed Dr. Moore, and he's trying to recruit nurses as well.
Okay.
Dr. Birdsong would like to comment.
I just wanted to make
okay.
a brief comment on something you just asked about. And so, the board did approve an increase in summer school teaching salary. So we did that intentionally because we knew that we would want to have a great deal of our children participate in the program. And so we know our teachers are tired, and we know, money isn't everything, but it is kind of an incentive for people to, for teachers to want to be a part of the program. So we know that will help.
Right, I appreciate
So
that.
thank you for approving that.
Okay, and the other thing, I'm going to continue to advocate for this. Last year, I think I brought it up, or the last couple of years, I brought it up, but I think it'd be really great to have like a college prep, like boot camp or something for our juniors going, or, our sophomores and our juniors, because a lot of, all kids, I think, the college application process has really changed. And, I know I didn't, when I was going through the process as a student, many, many years ago, I didn't have the support, being from an immigrant family. But I know even still, there are so many pieces now to it that, I think it would be great to have some support over the summertime as the college application begins to open, but just even how to write a college essay, and do some practice prompts. Like if we could do some sort of college prep boot camp, for, even preparing for the SATs, ACTs, and how to write a college essay, how to do the application, just something that, some people who have the resources are paying money, big money for, to get outside of the school environment. But we know that many of our students, when we talk about equity and opportunity, how do we, how can we create that within our schools?
Access, college access, we have a college access
Well, I do know
program.
that, yeah, I do know
There are
that.
quite a few programs there, but so noted, I'm not gonna belay the,
Yeah.
make this any longer, but so noted, Ms. Basine,
Yeah.
we do appreciate your thinking ahead in terms of our children.
I just want to thank you. Are you done?
Yes,
I don't mean to cut you off. I want to hear more about the. Very concerned 'cause, with our students who are failing 2 or more classes, and there's some particular schools that have high percentages. And so, can you tell me more about how we're encouraging and how that program looks? Because of course they're not all failing the same classes. So can you really share with us? So why? I mean, not why would parents, but so that parents feel like more. Can we have that discussion right now? So parents who are listening that might be in that situation may understand what is their child going to get out of that. So what the student wasn't able to accomplish over the past school year in a condensed time period. How are you going to help that child to, like you said, move on to the next level?
And that's part of the reason the middle school program is designed the way it's designed. The middle schools prior to last summer always had 2 sessions. When the children come in, the first session, the first 2 weeks of summer school, they take 1 course. The second 2 weeks session, they take another course. And the purpose there is to intensely focus on standards that those children need to learn or need to brush up on in order to earn a passing grade for that course. We're not trying to cover the entire school year. Sometimes children may fail 1 or 2 quarters. They may have grasped 50% or 60% or even 30% of the curriculum. But when you can get them in a small setting and you can work with them in that setting with the intent focus on, I'm going to help you succeed, then you can get results. So I think the parents will see it. It's not like, well, if you didn't get it in 9 months, you're not going to get it in 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's, please help my child. I want my child to move with the cohort group. When they start kindergarten, those 13 years later, I want my child in his graduating class or in her graduating class. So being able to focus intentionally on specific standards that we know will move them and help them be successful in the next grade is what we do when they failed 2 or more classes. The key is, right now in middle school, it's 2 classes. So the schools are going to really have to work with the students to make sure that they're not failing everything. And if they are failing everything, setting some goals for next school year so that they'll want to come back and they'll want to continue learning, because we don't just want it to just circle and just spiral down.
So it sounds to me like it's a more individualized program.
Small
Okay.
group, individualized, again, with that math, that Edmonton learning path, the reading skills. We have been able over years, reading comprehension in terms of main idea, context clues, building vocabulary, understanding tone, understanding theme, being able to draw conclusions and make inferences, knowing the skills that children need to be good readers, and not just reading and writing and answering questions on paper, but being able to talk, being able to discuss, being able to show that they're thinking.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank
you
you
all
very
so
much,
much.
Dr. Gibson. This is, another year of a very robust summer program, and it's just, thank you for putting this together for our students. It's amazing. Okay. Up next, we have our policy review with Dr. Pohl.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Martin, Vice Chair, Mr. Clanton, members of the board, and Dr. Birdsong. I'm here this evening to review some policies from the February VSBA update. Many of the policies have minor updates to the Virginia Code or have minor language changes such as removing the word shall. So there's a few I just want to highlight for you to review before the vote next board meeting. First, policy GBI, staff gifts and solicitation. It just further defines beyond just goods and also adds parents to the language in the policy. Policy IGBB, programs for gifted students. It adds language around the public having opportunity to review the plan during the development process. Policy JJAF is a brand new policy for Norfolk Public Schools on student athletes' sudden cardiac arrest. It is reflecting the enactment of a new Virginia code. This policy makes annual review for parents and guardians of student athletes and on symptoms that may lead to sudden cardiac arrest mandatory. So students who are removed from play that are experiencing symptoms of cardiac arrest may not return to physical activity until written clearance is received by an appropriate licensed healthcare provider. And the Policy Review Committee is requesting a first and second reading for this policy. And Mr. Sutmiller in the Department of Athletics has worked on creating a letter and notification information to parents about this new policy. Policy KNB, reports of missing children, is a new policy to Norfolk Public Schools. The procedures are already in place to follow the legal requirements, but this is a policy that we currently do not have on our records. Policy, or regulation rather, the regulation to KGZA, community use of school facilities. We've added the fees and insurance has been updated to include the cost for school bus rentals. And additionally, policies GCBB supplementary pay and GDI support staff assignments and transfers are presented again tonight for their second reading. And as a reminder to the public, there's a link on the NPS School Board webpage for public comment. And thank you for your attention this evening. We stand ready for any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Pohl. Any questions about our policies? Go ahead, Mr. Jordan.
The KGZA, the community use of school facilities with the bus piece. I didn't see, I know it's in the regulation, but then we have these additional KGZ policies and regulations that tie to it. Have you looked at, or should there be some additional references to the bus rental in these other policies? So for example, we have a policy that shows the use form, KGZCF1. Shouldn't that also be reflected in some of these other KGZ policies? Maybe I'm just asking if you all could just go back and make sure that by the adding of the buses in the one place, that it also doesn't have impact on the other policies that are referenced there. And then my other question related to that is the fee that was derived at. Can you speak to how that was determined?
Mr. Fraley and his folks reviewed the fee, and it's a fee we've currently been using that includes the basically the wear and tear of the bus, the fuel, and the driver cost. He did say, depending on where we go in the next year in the regulation, the fee may have to change, but it currently covers the costs. But as we watch the fuel prices possibly go up, it's something that we would have to reconsider in that regulation.
Yeah, 'cause that was I guess related to that was I couldn't quite figure out, since it was all lumped together. So as I understand this would be where someone or some organization outside of Norfolk Public Schools would apply to use the school bus, and then we would charge $50 an hour, which is inclusive. If they take a trip to Jamestown, is the fee the same as if they took the trip to Mount Trashmore, or is there some mileage in terms of additional costs associated with things like that in terms of distance and usage?
So currently it's based on the hourly rate, and I would have to check with Mr. Fraley and his folks to see if there's a limitation to where we allow our buses to go. I know a few years ago in other divisions, you couldn't go beyond the tunnel. So I would need to check on that. Mr. Fraley, I'm not sure if you're aware or not tonight.
Please stand up. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
At this current time, it's $50 per hour per bus. And the limitation is they have to get back before we need it for the next transportation run during the course of the school day. If it's on a weekend, we would limit it probably to 150 miles, but we don't have a maximum mileage defined yet.
Yeah, and it's not something that I would not support passing the policy, but I do think it's something we should consider, because I think the rate sounds like a pretty reasonable rate, and so we could find the school division in a situation where there's demand, and if there are going to be barriers, I think we should just spell it out, if it's either in the policy or in the regulations, so that you know, we don't find ourselves in situations where you know, you just
I agree,
take
Mr.
trips.
Jordan.
Yeah.
We don't need the Norfolk Public Schools Uber
Right,
to our
exactly.
buses. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Dr. Pohl.
Yeah.
Okay, and last on our agenda, we have 5.01, our future agenda item suggestions. I'm just gonna start off real quick with a couple of things that I had hoped to get to you that are gonna be on our agendas coming up, but unfortunately I was ill for the past few days. I just wrote it down. So we need to have discussion around our governance training dates, which Ms. Tanner is working on as well with our consultant, as well as our retreat date for July, and also our timeline, for Dr. Birdsong's summative evaluation. So those three things will be coming up for discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Clanton.
I just wanted to point in, because I know that some of my colleagues, Mr. Jordan and others, that had come up in discussion regarding Lindenwood and also Madison, and I did bring that up, and I just wanted to bring that back here, that the thought and the feeling was that with the new, we'll have a new strategic plan that we're going to be looking at sometime, hopefully in June. That the idea was, just rather than talking about those particular schools in isolation, that we kind of talk about it as a whole with the new strategic plan, and to talk about that with more time in July about how at our retreat. So I just wanted to let you know that we did have conversations. I know we were trying to look at maybe potentially this meeting or the next, but that was the thinking that came out of that. But I didn't want anybody to think that there wasn't any discussion around that, because I'm very much invested and interested in that as well.
We all are. Go ahead.
Yeah, and actually, I saw Dr. Martin at the Young Scholars Showcase on Friday, and asked her about that. So I'm not familiar with the strategic planning dates that you're mentioning.
Dr. Birdsong has been working on, her administration had been working on the strategic plan, and so we're going to get that presentation in June.
Okay.
That's all.
Right, but thanks for, so that's something that'll be on the June work session, is that correct?
That's the point.
Yes.
But the reason why I wanted to come back to Lindenwood in particular was hoping that we would have put it on the agenda, if not April, May, then maybe June. I'm not in disagreement with the context of how it fits into the larger plan. The discussion that we were having at the time, based upon the original recommendation that we had from the ed planning, was to change Lindenwood. Have the children split, have children from Madison come to. Mm-hmm. So when we had the conversation about it, I think in reference to the budget discussion, at least my take on it was that there were some specific supports and conditions that we wanted to talk about, so that in time for September, if there were things that needed to be done in order to support the student outcomes there, that's what we would have that initial discussion about. So I'm still advocating that the board do what we talked about and provide some focus on that campus. Of course, I also request that we do similar with Southside STEM, but in the context of Lindenwood, that we not wait till July. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how it gets integrated into the larger strategic plan. I think that in the case of Lindenwood at the time, had we approved changes for the recommendations that had come forward, there would have been, or there were supports that were identified to support the staffing and the students moving forward in September. Since we chose not to accept that recommendation, then I think we should have greater clarity around what is it going to look like come September and what supports and resources are needed so that Lindenwood in its status as we decided to keep it and Madison in the condition that we decided to keep it, what's going to be needed moving forward. And I'm nervous about the idea of holding it off until July retreat around a strategic planning process that I just don't know what that's going to look like.
So Dr. Birdsong, is there a deadline?
I'm happy to respond to that. So we're in May right now. We have graduations right around the corner and summer school. I just want to be sure that my team and I have adequate time to plan. So I can rush and put something together, in the next couple of weeks to share, but I really need more time with my team to have a meaningful conversation and discussion and really clear expectations from the board in terms of what are you looking for from, because you decided to not go with the recommendations around Lindenwood. So what is it that you're specifically looking for so that I don't have my team kind of go off on a wild goose chase and bring you back something that you're not asking for or you don't want? We really would like to hear that from the board, and we would really need some time for us to get together. We are at a very, very busy time, as you know, right now, trying to close out school and planning, and we have graduations and just other things going on right now. We really need more time, and I would continue to advocate for the retreat time for us to really have a deep and meaningful discussion around that.
Well, to your point, and I think we may be saying something similar.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to get the board to do.
Okay.
So that we could be clear to you
Okay.
what expectations we would have, so then you all could go off and do your thing, or, in whatever.
I appreciate that. Because
So
my understanding was that you wanted me to come to you with something, and I'm not sure what that something is.
No, that's my concern. My concern is, and that's why at the time that we had the discussion, why I thought we could have done it in April. And then now May, and now being pushed off. I think the board with the superintendent needs to have the conversation around what are our expectations sooner rather than later. And I don't think that we need to necessarily then be dragged into your operational strategic planning process. I think we have to be clear on what our expectations are, and then have you and your team have that opportunity and time that you said, so that we are clear around what our expectations are and what we can look at, hopefully, when school, for the new school year. So I'm not trying to say we shouldn't have the strategic discussion. What I am saying is the longer the board waits to provide clarity around our expectations, the more pressure it puts on the administration, as you described. So that's where I'm trying to
That we have this
have the conversation addressed.
The discussion earlier.
So I'd like to say we put it on June
I mean, could we?
Do a whole
Okay.
new program.
Yeah.
at a work session, because this is what I asked for, to have a conversation, not a plan.
May I add something?
If you're going to, so June would be our next meeting. So if that's the case, what is it that you need from the administration to have the discussion that you'd like to have?
So if I may, I think what Mr. Jordan also just said in there, if we were going to move the students from Lindenwood to other schools, and when we said there were going to be supports that followed those students, now we're not moving those students there as a part of what was presented to us. What is the plan to support and also identifying what gaps we may have at that particular school location, and if it needs additional potential resources or whatever, that the board has a clear discussion about what that environment looks like right now, so that we can give, at some point out of our discussion, a clear detail of what needs to take place. If it needs moving resources or whatever, but that we have that opportunity. I don't, is that?
We need to have the discussion
Yes.
together to understand the viable options, not only with the
Exactly. So we can
facility,
give
but with
clear
the programming in the facility, so that you know, we have a very sound, we're moving our children into a very sound educational environment with all the resources it needs.
Yes.
So that's what.
But I don't think that we're still being clear to what
Not
we
at
need to
all.
give to the superintendent and what she needs to hear from us. And so the recommendation came to the board to move the students from Lindenwood for a variety of reasons. It was academic, it was facility. And so from the board level, we need to be clear that if there is an expectation on our end that this is a building that we are saying is going to remain open for a period of time, then we need to step back and think about what were the items that brought the superintendent to making this decision to begin with. Do we agree or disagree with those items? And then what would we change? Because her and her administration were trying to follow what she thought she heard from the board with regards to improving student outcomes academically and socioeconomic diversity. So what we need to do then is look back at that and say, since we decided not to do that, what is it then that we are looking for? I already know that they are going to have supports in place to help the students academically. They're going to revert things that were going to be done with the facility and whatnot. But on our level, at a higher level, what else are we going to think about with regards to long-term planning for those students, that building, the Madison program? That's how I'm seeing this discussion unfold.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Jordan in that request. I mean, we absolutely have to look at the programming along with the building, and also, you know, what are our goals? I think we need to talk about, like, revisit that, say, establish what are our goals for that school, and how are we going to achieve them, and set the school on that path. But I think what we might need from the administration is, you know, a review of the the academic update, maybe, you know, whatever we have at the end of the year, which we're going to receive, but the school by school. But what are the supports that we know that the students in that school need specifically, and what, you know, even the community engagement around that school, which is one of the major reasons that some of us, you know, had questions and brought it forward. What do we want? What kind of feedback do we want to receive from the stakeholders, you know, the internal stakeholders, the teachers, administrators of the school, as well as the families of students in that school? And so those are some things that I think we need to come together and talk about. And one of the other schools, you know, that I have a similar request is around Tidewater Park, and like really getting an understanding and discussion around what that timeline looks like as students, not this year, but next year, will move into Ruffner. So I think we all need to come together to have that discussion and set expectations, programming, what outcomes we're hoping to achieve, and I think we need to come together on that. And the sooner, the better.
As well as the Madison program, though, still that's.
Well, absolutely, and that was already, you know, and not just the Madison, it's like our alternative education programming in general. What do we want to achieve? And I think we need to receive a lot. I think that is a retreat topic, but right now, I mean, so, you know, I guess going back to the basics, I don't know what is being planned for our upcoming meeting. So that was one thing to kind of bring it back to the original, is what are we planning, and how do we plan in a way that we can start the school year off at these high priority schools, including Southside STEM Academy, to really get a handle on what the needs of our students are in those buildings. So, and the sooner we can have that discussion, the better.
Go ahead, Dr. House. Carlson?
Yes, and I also think we do know what the needs are for Lindenwood. I think the data tells us. So I'm not sure whether it's necessarily us, the board, to determine something, because I think they already exist. I think we know that
Right.
there's some issues at Lindenwood with perhaps turnover, teacher credential. I mean, it's some things that we
Well, we could
know
get
already
updated
that I don't
information.
think we need to rehash necessarily. I think we know, and I think in terms of the infrastructure things are going to be done even with the original plan, in terms of being the alternative school. So I know that that was already in the plan also, in terms of redoing that school, because we were going to put another population in there, our most vulnerable population in that school. So I know that that had to be a big part, that infrastructure piece was already going to happen. But now that we changed it and that those students are going to stay there, so the infrastructure part was going to happen already for Madison in the original plan. They were going to redo some things in that school, because if they were going to keep it just the same as it is now for Madison, then I'm not sure what, so plans are already planned to do some things in the school for Madison to go into Lindenwood for the original plan. So we know that's going on. The infrastructure piece for Lindenwood was going to happen and already looked at and studied. So now it's just a matter of looking at restructuring some things in the school from data that we know.
Right.
Whether it be stable leadership, getting
Part staff.
Teachers.
hard staff
Teachers.
school, getting teachers, and
That's
figuring out ways how we can maneuver all of that. And of course, the administration will be a big part of helping us to devise that.
Right, and that's what I
That the
mean, like
board,
that
we would be able to
updated
devise
data.
that. Right.
Like
But
where.
things are
we
already
but we
there,
know
though.
a
Things are
lot.
there
Right,
to start that going,
right,
even long before June or July,
yeah.
to start some of that work.
Right, but for us to have that discussion as a board is, I think, what we're trying to get at, is we know what it is, we've seen the data, all year long, and for many years.
Right.
We know, right, but have we adequately come together as a team to have that discussion about what is our shared vision for that school? And that's the piece I think that may be missing.
We did, not since,
It will be for any
February?
school.
yeah, for
I mean,
any.
For any
it's-
school.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's-
absolutely.
We don't need
That's
to
why I think,
develop a scheme for Lindenwood. I mean,
Right.
we have that already. Yeah. Okay,
Head Ms. Campson.
thank you.
Yeah.
We're
We're gonna schedule
agenda says, we're gonna say, well, we're not gonna sit here and do it now. Like, we've been talking about this for 20 minutes.
Right, but I think
So
our
if
ultimate
we
goal
can say,
is.
what we
get it.
want is we need it to be an agenda item, we need it to be an agenda item soon, and then let's go. Let's move on to, if someone else has it, I don't think that it's necessary to sit here and talk 20 minutes about an agenda item you're requesting, when we'll be talking about it when it's on the agenda.
Right.
I mean, this drags out, this happens every time, as we drag out another half hour, another hour, starting the discussion that we're asking to get on a future agenda. So I think we discussed it a lot. We know we want it on the agenda, I want it on the agenda, everybody wants it on the agenda as soon as possible. And now we move on if there's any other agendas that need to be done. If they could just tell us what it is, the way you did it at the beginning. You went doom, 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 here are the three.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Dr. Martin, can you share when it's being planned to share the final report of the pay and compensation study, the updated study? Is that on the agenda? Upcoming agendas?
I have it in my notes. Dr. Birdsong, do you have it?
So, so we're still working through that, and I don't want to put Mr. Phillips on the spot right now, but certainly I would think definitely by July that everything would be finalized. We're in the beginning of May now. Would that be fair to say, Mr. Phillips? I hate to put you on the spot. I would just need to go back. I just know we don't have
Yeah,
the final
listen.
report yet, and I don't want to put him on the spot about that. I don't think that's appropriate.
I don't have a date for it.
Okay, so I request that when we do have that, we have had in our accountability plan, our monitoring of teacher retention. But I think because I'd like to see that be a priority discussion, that's something that we are continually monitoring, especially given, the challenges that we've had this year, and not just us, but, that nationally, schools are having. But speaking specifically of Norfolk Public Schools, I think that's something that we need to be monitoring more regularly outside and having opportunity for board discussion so that we can talk about supports necessary to ensure that we're have all vacancies filled as much as possible. The other piece is what we talked about. I want to make sure that we're doing this is having opportunity for feedback from our advisory committees, which we talked about earlier. So I just want to say that in open session that is included in agenda planning to provide that feedback or to openly receive it and respond. And and I anticipate that we're going to have continued budget discussions as well. So what is your projected plan around the board coming back to have that? I know there's a lot of unknowns, but I think we should be prepared to have, whether it's a special meeting or something, because, I know there's going to be a lot happening on that front in the weeks to come, and I think the board needs to be ready.
Just waiting our turn, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, because city council is voting next Tuesday. Do we know that date yet?
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
That's the
next
plan?
Tuesday.
May 10th? Okay. So we should, I guess I'm mentally just trying to prepare, when we might be coming back together.
And I mean,
We have agenda planning the first Monday of the month, and sometimes we move it up earlier. So I'm just saying, we just haven't met we have it listed out. We just haven't. We're waiting for the dates to come together. So
yeah, because we don't know what the state has
Yeah, we
not
don't know
approved the
that.
budget,
I know that. Yeah.
it's-
right. Is there
Right.
anything else?
Just for clarity on that then, so the board is not expected to vote on the budget on the business meeting of this month, correct?
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
we're not ready
That's a
to.
good question. Those.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This is a great meeting. A lot of really good discussion, and we have. This next. Oh, yeah, it's Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah, and yesterday was Teacher Appreciation Day.
Yes. And I know a lot of the PTAs in the community has been really active in our schools, and I just want to thank everyone who's contributed to making our teachers and staff feel so special, and recognizing them for all that they do for our children and our parents. I think, and guiding our parents and guardians to help our children succeed, and that they are truly the foundation of everything we do, and building our great community here in Norfolk. So,
Sunday was principal. Appreciate
I'm sorry?
it. Sunday was
Sunday's principal.
Sunday
Appreciate
was.
it. Okay. Thank you. And of course also our very strong principals that are in our schools. We truly appreciate your leadership in our district.
Mother's Day.
With that, meeting
And happy
adjourned.
Mother's Day coming up.
Happy Mother's Day.
We have to leave something for Karen's
right,
clerk
right.
report at our
Karen's clerk report.
business meeting, but yeah.